just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other. Welcome back to another episode of the PAC Podcast. We were just talking off camera about you feeling a bit not like yourself, maybe under the weather. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you just didn't feel your normal self. And I guess that made me reflect on a conversation I had today with a client where we've been working on her getting to the end of her week and feeling overwhelmed and like she didn't accomplish anything. And we're trying to identify some sort of system she can operate in so that by the end of the week, she felt calm, she felt accomplished, and she felt energized. And those three buzzwords were coming from a place of opposite of all those. She had a lack of all of those things. So long story short, we've been working a number of weeks on developing a process and a system and a checklist and this and that. And my ultimate takeaway from what she shared today was it's just identifying what's realistic to get done before the week occurs and calling out those 3 to 5 most important things and focusing on them. So the light bulb went off when we mentioned she's not getting any more or different work done throughout the week. She's just matching her expectations to what she's actually can get done, what she has the ability to do. I just thought that was so interesting because what's happening is that she's feeling more fulfilled in the same work. And so my observation is, it's not always like a one-for-one trade-off. I want to feel good, therefore I got to make all these changes. It could be as simple as a change in perspective. And now I introduced that concept because when we physically feel, we have symptoms where we're not feeling good. I don't know if the same thing applies. I guess I'm wondering what your observation is with that, having, being in that space right now with like just not feeling physically like yourself.
Yeah, my levers of reflection coming to my thoughts here of contrast, context, and scale. As always, if I was recovering from being on my deathbed, I would be feeling fantastic. It depends what you're contrasting it to, right? And then if so that's my contrast. A context might be like if I'm feeling like I am now and I'm seeing someone else who's a lot older than me that's having trouble walking around and can't walk upstairs, that's also going to change the frame. And if I scale it out and say like zoom it forward a few days, I'll be fine. It's all right. It's no big deal. Right. So you've always got those different levers to pull on. And we know in what we do, coach, that tracking and measuring is really important. And we like to gamify it so you can create some games around making it not feel quite so heavy. And but I found out, and I know you might already know this, but I found that there is I think philosopher by the name of Pearson, and he had something he called Pearson's Law. As you would if you thought something up. And it's stuff as we know, but I'd never heard it described this. He said that when performance is measured, performances improve. Surprise! Right? Okay, but let's just be clear about that. Like, if you do not measure it, it will not get better. And so the distinction that I made here, is that oftentimes we say we want to change something and measure what we're changing, but just measuring what already exists makes it better. So this ties to your point that the result wasn't any different. It's about how you feel about the result. Because performance improves. It could have been improving anyway, but we didn't know because we weren't measuring it. But we know for sure once we do measure it, it will improve because we're aware of what it is. Right? And the second part to that is when performance is measured and reported back, the rate of improvement accelerates. So if you're measuring it and just going, okay, good, that's one thing. you're going to get improvement. But if you're measuring it and you're sharing with someone else, then the circles of the cycle of that is going to speed up as well. I think that fits in very well for your observation for your client there. Like, it's not, if we're saying, okay, what's my 3 wins for today, 3 wins for the week? It's not the gravity of the impact of those wins. It's the fact that you're measuring them that makes a difference. And if you're setting up a particular game where you need to make 10 widgets a week to make that week successful, and over the year you can make that times 50, and that combination of those is success, that's averaging out the year. But what if you take 2 or 3 weeks vacation, don't make any widgets? That's 30 you're down. Are those weeks going to be terrifying and terrible? Right? Each week, you should look at the scale of the whole thing and say, here's how we win overall in terms of the volume. But you should also judge each week based on the ability or the opportunity or the availability in that particular week or time frame.
Yeah. Context, contrast, and scale. I think, we talked about those concepts before. I think each time that we apply it to an actual situation, it gives me more clarity on how powerful it is to, are they all reframes? Is that what it is? Is just a different lens? Like we're just swapping out the lens that we're looking at whatever we're dealing with?
I've actually done a lot of work on creating some more distinctions in this frame because I think it's so powerful. Every time I mention it, it stops people. I call them the 3 levers of reflection. And so it ties well with the 3 gears of energy. Right? That we know that most time we're taking action in execution, and we often only stop as high achievers when we need to rest, but it's harder for us to get into that reflection space. And so if it's hard to get into that reflection space, then it's not likely we're going to be very good at it. So what if we got a tool and a framework to work within once we get to that reflection? And that would be those 3 levers, right? And so if you can say, number 1, contrast is take where you are today and go a year backwards exactly and say, okay, where was I then? Describe your life then to describe your life now. And what you're going to find lots and lots of things that you have accomplished over that time. That's the looking back over that year period, let's say, for that contrast. The context is today or this time frame, but looking at it from someone else's viewpoint to change the context. What would your best friend say about where you are? What would someone in your family say about where you are? What would a complete stranger say? What would someone that works in your business or industry say that's at a different level of you say about where you are? And the scale is a zoom out. What will it matter in 10 years? What will it look like in 10 years? 5 years? Or what if I double it, triple it? And playing with the scale around it. Or you can also go the other way, right? You can make it smaller. What would it look like if you make it smaller? And all of these things are there just to give you more openings in the terms of how you may think about those things. And if you go through that practice, you're going to get some new answers.
To ultimately make us feel better?
Everything we do is for feeling better, right?
Yeah.
You know, what we believe is what we think. We think is what we do. What we do is then the results we get. And the results we get are for what reason? To feel a certain way. To get certain chemistry in our brain so we can feel a certain way.
So here's a segue into, my original question might be, so how do we know what to measure? Right. And I think I already know what you might say. Like it doesn't matter. Measure something. I guess that's where my question comes in with, just say we've established something. We don't know if it's perfect or the right thing to measure or if we're doing it the right way. But we get some feedback and we decide to relook at it and see if there's something else different, better to measure. Is there a best practice or a way to think about when you go to make the tweak, what to look for? Does it have to do with feeling? Does it have to do with just intuition? You just get that knowing after you measure things for a little while. Like, what does that look like? How do you know?
Well, it has a lot to do with where you're going, right? I mean, if you don't care where you're going, it doesn't matter what you're measuring. You got to have the balance between where am I going, what am I creating, what does success look like over the time frame which I think is appropriate for my life right now, and then you measure backwards based on where you are and the action you take. Right, you got to have the where am I going? What's the timeline? What's the milestone I'm trying to hit next? And then as you're reflecting back from where you are, I'd say, have I made progress towards that milestone? And then that's the check to say, okay, I measured these things, but I'm not close to my milestone, even though I'm further forward with the things I'm measuring. Well, they can't be right because I'm not close to my milestone or my goal or what I want to get to.
So is that the indicator? Like that we're not getting closer to our goal. It doesn't feel as efficient as it could be in getting to the goal, so we need to measure something else.
Yeah, but it also might be a goal that's so far out that whatever you do, it feels like you're not getting there. Then you're just setting yourself up to fail. So it's more appropriate to have maybe an ideal of what you want to create. It's like having a vision. Visions are often so big and huge that like it's going to take so many big distinctions and milestones along the way to even create a foundation for going for the shot to actually get into your goal. Like, you might say that if you're equated to sports, which I know that you're great at making these distinctions around, if your goal is that you're 10 years old in whatever sport and your goal is to be pro in that sport, like that can just seem so far away, but it's useful in an ideal because it gives you a way to think. But that wouldn't be the milestone you would measure yourself against from being 10 years old to 11 years old. So you would create milestone based on that. Yeah.
Right. So, and in that though, maybe like that's a great example because it's like, well, what do I need to do to become a professional athlete? And there's so many different factors, right? You could say, well, I think I need to win this number of championships, or I need to have this many accolades, personally, or I need to have, these stats. Ultimately, and this is, good for the business analogy. Those are results, right? Those are things that are technically out of our control. Those are things that happen to us. Or for us, or however you want to say that. But there's actions here, right? So I think what we're getting to is controlling what we can control.
Sure.
And like, what is it right to say that the way that we do that is to first identify what we want that's out of our control? Like that's ultimately what a lag dial is, right? It's technically out of our control.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about Stephen Covey's circles of influence, like what's in your reach, what's in your control is what you should focus on. And then the more that you focus on that, then the outside layer is what you influence. And then ultimately that both of those expand. So the more you focus on what you can control, the more you can influence. And then the more you bring into your control from that influence, the wider that circle grows. And then the outer circle of influence is also then wider as well. So you can play all right, if I want to go pro when I'm 16 years old, 17 years old, 18 years old, I don't know. From 10 to 11, what would be an appropriate focus on I can control so therefore my influence levels change by the time I'm 11 or 12 or 13? A good goal might be I want to be able to be seen by a scout in this sport. Well, I don't control what they go and what they do. What do I control myself on such that I can have that level of influence?
Yeah, and so something like that could be, I'm thinking of hockey, 100 slap shots a day.
Right.
And I know that if I measure that, I'll get better at it because it's forcing me to do it. And so if I do something that's within my control, which is the daily count of slap shots, then my influence grows as well. Is that right? How would my influence grow if I am focused on what I can control, which is the slap shots? What happens in the outer circle?
So slap shots. Every time when you show up to play, you're more effective at playing. You're the MVP of the game. People notice you. People talk about you. You get invited to more games. You're always starting. The people around you are talking about it. Becomes some sort of buzz and impact. You get more notoriety, and then your team starts to win, and the team goes further up in the leagues, and it gets to a place where it's higher enough up in the leagues such that scouts come to watch those games.
And so I guess maybe I'm getting hung up on influence. So the influence is it more like a reaction of what's happening to people around me, like how they're reacting to me. So they're like showing up to my games now because of that.
Yeah, like I can't control you, coach, but I can influence you, right? If I find out what's important to you and what you want, I can talk to you about that, and I can influence your actions. I don't control them, and so as soon as I start thinking about I can control you, I'm lost. But if I can stay in the what does think like Josh, what does Josh want? And right now I talk about hockey and like I get you like an extra level of engaged because I can just steer the concept through a hockey lens, and it's easy to have you super engaged, right? Like, and now that's great for me because what I want is you really digging down into my thoughts so I can make them better,
Mm.
right? So I can't
Yep.
control you. As soon as I think I can, then I've lost. But I can definitely
Mm.
influence you, just like you can influence me.
You're right. So that's interesting. So if we use that with the hockey analogy, a scout is looking for a great player, right? They're looking to scout great players. So how are great players made? That's what I can't control. So I go and be a great player by doing 100 slap shots a day.
Correct.
And therefore,
Yeah,
as
you
my skill level goes up because I'm doing that. So he's going to want to see me because I have developed into a great player.
right. So you're essentially you're focusing on you, so you're putting out who you are, and you're attracting the right people, and so you're influencing that directly or indirectly. You're that scout that shows up for the game wants to find a great player. So your goal is not to go up to that scout and say, "Choose me." The goal is to be a good player, a great player. They're
Mm-hmm.
already out there trying to find you. Just be great at what you do. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
All right. Tie it in a
It's a big
bow because
advice.
yeah, I like the visuals that the Covey's principle, the circles there. So is there a third one? I was just looking it up. Is there a third circle outside that?
If you're looking up, do
Control
you
is
know
the
what I mean? Like,
middle. Influence is
yeah.
the. I see circle of concern. I'm just
Okay.
wondering where
Yeah.
that might show up for us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a long time since I read his work. But yes, the circle of concern is I forget the distinction around it. Oh, that's the stuff. Okay, so that's the stuff where you can't influence it, you can't control it, but it's the stuff that's just outside of it that you could probably see and want to try and get to. So
Mm.
it's the stuff that's most likely to drive you crazy should you focus on it.
Hmm. Ah, that's very interesting. Yeah.
Right. So it's like having the priorities rather than a priority and saying here's my top three. And if it's not one, then two and three are your biggest potential distractions from what's the most
Mm.
important piece.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So I forgot that circle. That's really important, right? So it's not just here's where you should be focusing on to get to this, but here's where you definitely shouldn't be focusing on. So
Right.
I
Mm.
play in that analogy. Then, yeah, if you're focused on getting better and you're spending your time going, where do the scouts hang out when they're not watching games? Right? There might be a play around that, but only after you're focusing on all you can do in your focus circle of control.
So it always comes back to that, and like we're saying, if we do focus on that, what we can't control, then the rest of the circles expand as well. They all expand.
Yeah, because there's always going to be a circle of concern outside it as well.
Ooh, interesting. All right. So yeah, for a particular thing, it might come into the other circle as we go, but there'll always be another thing that's replaced
There's always been another thing, right? You become a pro, and then you
with that
win the
thing.
games, and
Right.
then you
Mm.
you want to be, the most decorated player ever. Like that might be further out there, and it's like,
Right.
oh, how many Super Bowls you want to win? I'm mixing sports. How many Super Bowls you want to win? It's like I'm just concentrating on winning this one for now, right? Or in
Yeah.
UFC fighting where they're on the road to get the fight after this might be the one that they get the championship fight. And people say, I was thinking about a championship fight, and like the guy that I was expected to beat knocked me out, like because I was
Hmm.
thinking about the fight after. Right, you're in the wrong place, right? focus on the things you're not in control.
Mm.
Good one, Coach.
Yeah, that's very interesting concepts today. Thank you for this. Looking forward to our next one.
Take care. We're out.
All right.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction, so please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.